Well, hello, everybody. I think we're live now. Thank you for joining in to Viral Faith today. Today is Monday, June 8th, and it's good to be with you all here. Glad to share this time. We've been doing this for a while now since the pandemic started, trying to be connected with one another and think in terms of how to encourage one another in our faith. So I hope and pray that that's been something that has happened for you as these weeks have moved on. As you see, I've got another guest with me here this morning. The format is varied. Sometimes it's just myself, sometimes it's others, sometimes it's an interview format. And so I want to welcome you all to this conversation today with me and Pastor Izzy as well. And so I'm just going to welcome everybody who's in the chat right now, and glad that you can engage with us this afternoon. So I wanted to ask Pastor Izzy to join me again as a way of giving a COVID update, so to speak. You may or may not be aware that I looked back in our archives. It was a little over a month ago when Izzy shared about his mother's case of COVID-19 that went from 0 to 600 miles an hour in the wrong direction very, very quickly. And I thought I would attempt to play here just now a little clip of that earlier conversation a month ago, and then we'll get a little bit of update from Izzy himself. So let me just play this here if I can get it dialed in. Here we go.
Or so later, they did another consultation just because she wasn't doing well. And he looked at her and said, get to the emergency room right now, get an ambulance. And so my dad and my brother Alex, my older brother Alex, they took her to NYU hospital, and she tested positive for COVID. And the first few days was okay. And then after that, it just took a turn for the worst. Excuse me, she had to be on a respirator. She had to be intubated. She was knocked out for about 2 weeks. And, they were breathing for her and doing all those things. And so
there were some points in there where, you and I and others were having conversations about this seems like it's quickly becoming almost like an end of life situation here. It was that serious.
Yeah, it got really scary. I mean, we were having conversations about DNR stuff and like, how is she responding? My dad was on the phone with us 2-3 times a day, just getting updates from the doctor. Doctor wanting to know, do we have permission to sign a DNR or not? And so it got life-threatening really, really quick, and we were all just taken by surprise by it.
Yeah, so that takes us back, Izzy, to where we were just about a month ago, or a little bit more than a month ago, with your mother's situation. Just to hear that played back, what was going through your mind?
Man, that was the worst. That was horrible. There was so many dynamics going on. The safety here of my family, work stuff, and then you're across the country and you're literally helpless. You can't do anything. Me and my brother were talking like, what do we do? Do we go over there? And it's like, we can't. We're not even allowed to be over there. It was horrible. And, she got worse. This is more of a personal thing. She got worse during the week of, in a week of April, that my real mother died April 21st. And the mom now, this is the family who adopted me, she got worse that week. And I was like, no, God, you're not going to do that, right? This can't be some cosmic joke on me. So it was just weird. It was scary. It was all of those things.
Anytime you're talking about having to invoke a do not resuscitate order, I mean, think that's a very, very heavy situation to have to deal with for sure. So that was more than a month ago, and at the end of that call, you were talking about how there was this dramatic improvement in your mom's situation from being on a vent and being so low oxygen levels in her. It didn't look like it was going to turn around, and it began turning around. So give us the update on your mother's situation right now, and then I want to ask you a few questions about that.
Yeah, so the latest is, praise God, Mom is home, and we are just so grateful. There was like a major turnaround, like in the darkest hour where we were trying to make decisions. A day or two later, she woke up, and we're just grateful for that. She went through PT. She got transferred out of the hospital to a physical therapy unit. She did that for several weeks. And then last week she got sent home. And so she's doing physical therapy at home. And, you know, she's tough. One of the toughest women I know outside of my wife. And so she's just working hard at home to get better. So she is home. She's breathing. She's still wrestling. You know, her body's not doing what it used to do, but she's fighting through it and trying to get healthy. And so praise God, she is home. And we're just so grateful for that.
Yeah. Boy, we share in that. There was a lot of us who were praying for you, just as we've been praying over these last 80 plus days for people by name who are experiencing something similar or at risk of experiencing similar. So our hearts just completely have been with you in this. I'm curious to ask, now that your mom got back home and she continues her therapy, but you know, we just really thank God for this intervention on his part. Have you spent much time reflecting of what that is doing to your faith and what it means to your faith? Because I remember when we had that conversation about your birth mother's anniversary of her death was coming up, and it looked like, wait a second, there's like a possibility that you know, your adoptive mother could also potentially pass as serious as her situation was becoming. And I know there was a lot of internal wrestle. I know you felt God could change this, but you didn't know if he would.
Yeah.
So like, that's where you were then. Where are you at now? What's the Lord been revealing to you and encouraging you about your faith? Because, you know, everybody who's with us, following us in this conversation, has something going on in their life. It may not be life-threatening at this moment, but there's some situation where we just know it's not going to change unless God intervenes, and we know he can. We just don't know what he will do, and how do we reconcile that so that we can just sit at peace no matter what happens? Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, man, I felt like in that season that I was like in this middle limbo ground, because like, if you know me, you know that I am like all practical, right? Like I'm going to think logically through things, and I'm all practical. And I sometimes approach my faith that way. And so over the last several years, the Lord has been challenging me like, no, don't be practical. I work outside of that. And so I've been really trying to lean into, okay, Lord, you can do the impossible. But it felt like I kept on being let down. Like, Lord, heal this person, and this person passes. Lord, do this miraculous thing, and it doesn't happen. And I was like, all right, Lord, I need you to show up. And so when this thing happened with Mom, I was in that middle, like, all right, I don't even know where to stand. Like, this is bad. Only 12% of people in New York are surviving this, and she's right in the middle of it. And this is why I think community is so important. I felt like in this season, I borrowed my brother's faith. My brother Ben was, he's in Pennsylvania, and he was just proclaiming it and declaring it. And like, just even when she was under, like on a respirator, intubated, he was saying, when we would call her and speak over her, he would say to her, I am excited to hear your story. I am so proud of the progress you're making, and we believe and we're inspired that you're going to wake up and we're going to hear from you again. And I had to borrow his faith because I was just like, I don't feel like I'm always there, but if you're believing that, I'm going to believe with you. I'm going to go down that trail with you because right now I believe a little bit, but help my unbelief. Right.
Right.
Lord, I believe, but help my unbelief. So I was like borrowing his faith. And what was also beneficial for me too, my other brother, Jesse, he has a medical background. And so he was able to like practically speak to what's actually happening. And so I just felt like the covering of my brothers, like, okay, I'm leaning on these guys from the practicality and the spirituality. But I really felt like I had to borrow my brother's faith. And that's why I think just community is so crucial, because when you're down in the dumps, like those people with high faith can pull you out without even knowing it.
Well, let's dig into that a little bit. I just asked the group, have you ever had a situation where you've essentially borrowed somebody else's faith for a minute because yours was so low, but you were surrounded with people who did have faith? And at first somebody might hear that and go, well, that's not very much faith on my part. But say more about this, Izzy, because it's like how the in dimension is supposed to work with if we're surrounded by a community of people who love us, the Lord may be giving a certain kind of faith to them just for this. The biblical imagery that I think about is the man getting lowered down through the roof to Jesus by his friends, right?
That was the exact thing I was thinking about as well. It's like, here I am, I'm helpless. I don't know if I can move, I got nothing at this point. But the people around me are going to advocate for me, and they are going to bring me to Jesus, right? And so for my brother Ben at that moment, it was just like his faith is bringing me to Jesus. It's forcing me to seek Jesus and to see how his faith is activated in this season, caused me to, like, I rode that wave, right? All right, brother, I'm going to trust you because I trust the God in you. And I am going to lean on your faith. And the Lord began to do something in me. Also, my wife was like fasting and praying constantly, reaching out to people. And it was like, man, I don't feel like I'm there. Like, I don't know what to do. I'm scared. I feel helpless. I can't do anything because my mind works like, go do something. And all you can do is fast and pray. And so, like, even my wife was just a pillar of strength for me in those times. And so I think that's why it's just so important to have these people around you. If you surround yourself with people, godly people, in these moments, they will lift you up. They will bring you to Jesus. But if your circle isn't that, man, when tragedy hits, good luck.
Now you're putting your finger on the challenging point of this, is that you can't build that community of faith once you get into the crisis. Like you got to be building that community in peacetime.
Yeah.
So that when the war comes, you're ready for that. And I've seen that in so many ways. I catch regular glimpses of the fellowship body doing that. I think about the storm that enveloped our sister Jen Sloniker after her husband perished tragically, and you were up there as well in that ICU room, and you saw this flood of people come in, and you and I could tell, as others could too, like this community got formed up over the years prior that they had been connecting at fellowship. And so part of the lesson learned in this is, like, we always have to be developing and digging into more community, right?
Well, it's investing. I was having a conversation with an FMCer this morning about, like, flourishing is developing spiritual equity, right? It's spiritual wealth, right? Like I have equity in my home so that when something happens, I can pull from the equity and fix it, or I can upgrade, right? And so when you invest in godly people, when you invest as equity, when something happens, you can pull from that equity. That's what flourishing is, like flourishing in with community. It's developing the spiritual capital or this relational capital with people, or relational equity under the umbrella of flourishing, so that when it goes down, man, I just got people surrounded. I mean, I think of like how packed was it when Mark Linville passed, and there was just so many people surrounded in that moment. It was because this man for years just loved and loved and loved and loved and had relational equity. And so that's why it's just so important to have, build that in peace times, like you said.
So what would you say to somebody? Are you going to take that?
Nope, I did.
What would you say to somebody listening in on this conversation, and they would say, I don't think I have the community that I really need to undergird me, but I'm challenged in developing that community, whether because it's hard to take the first step and get into a new group, or to show up somewhere, or maybe you just don't have confidence that way, or we've all been there where you've been burned in the past and you don't know if you can trust people. If I'm feeling some of that, what word of hope or challenge would you have for me today?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I think is come closer, get closer. The primary community you need first and foremost is with the Father, with Jesus, and with the Spirit, right? And so come closer to God. And as you come closer to God, I think there's opportunity with God's people to develop strong relationships. I mean, here at Fellowship, you show up prior to COVID, show up at any night of the week, and there's community of people there growing, loving one another. And so I would just say, first thing, like show up ready, get closer to God, and He will provide opportunity for you.
Yeah, no, that's good. And Amy, I see you letting Jennifer know. Jennifer, maybe your ears were burning. I did just reference
They're growing.
You and the community that you and Jason had invested in at Fellowship, prior to his passing. And I was just using that as an illustration of how, well, Izzy was using it as an illustration of how we have to invest in building community when we're not in a crisis, so that when we do come into a crisis of faith, or a crisis situation that really tests our faith, that we can lean on the faith of others. And I think that's how God kind of orchestrates it. Like we need one another, and through those times, then our faith has a chance to grow and increase. And let me just ask you on that note, Pastor Izzy, and you may or may not have a sense at this point, because it's still pretty early on since your mother's recovery, but where do you feel like the Lord is growing your faith? Where did you feel in this continuing journey with your mother's health? And we've turned some significant corners. Where do you feel like He really is strengthening your faith? Where's your faith stronger? To believe that He's good all the time and He's not going to play, a cruel joke on you? Or like, how would you describe that, I wonder?
Yeah, several things. I just have a lot of thoughts. I go back to one scripture that was so comforting to me in a hard time, and it's in Psalms. He says, "Yet you are holy." David feels abandoned. He feels persecuted. He feels like the Lord just left him, and then he comes to his senses and says, "Regardless of my circumstances, yet you are still holy." So leaning on the Lord's holiness is true. I think as I submit my will and even submit my faith to God, I have to come to the conclusion that He wants my best in all circumstances. And my best doesn't always look like God's best for me. If it was for me, my best is, I have millions of dollars, nobody ever dies, and there's world peace, right? That's my best. But the Lord's best is very different than my best. And so I have to trust that what He has, or what He's doing, or what He allows is for my good and for my best. And so I'm part of the journey. Like, I am not the end all be all, but I'm part of the journey. And so submitting my will and submitting my faith to that reality of, okay, he has my best in mind, that kind of, in some ways, evens the playing field. Like I don't have to be anxious or worry about certain things because I know he's going to take care of it. And if it's not taken care of, it's because he has a different design, and I trust that.
Yeah. No, that's well said. I think we can relate. And on the previous question, Ashley and Daryl Jackson were just kind of agreeing that it's hard to move closer. There's some barriers in continuing to move closer and investing in relationships because we often compare our walk to other people, and it can be a barrier to coming close. And I think a lot of what you're describing there, Izzy, related to what Daryl was saying, is the importance of vulnerability. And the opposite of vulnerability is being scared you don't measure up and you might get found out. And that's completely understandable why we feel that way. But what true Christian community is a place of just grace and truth, and this place of you're welcome, and we all need to be authentic about where we're at so that we can flourish more. And there's no shame in saying this is where I'm currently at, because with the help of you all around me, this isn't where I'm going to stay. You know, I'm going to grow. And so I know for you, just thinking about that, initially you weren't sure you wanted to, how vulnerable you wanted to be with your situation with your mom. And that's all completely understandable because of how much emotional freight there is that's attached to that. But that's something we all struggle with. Pastors, maybe more than most, is a willingness to be vulnerable, because what we long to be is a church where vulnerability is rewarded, because that's the only way you can get the truth of those things. That's the only way we're going to be an authentic community together, is if nobody's trying to put on airs and act like they got all their stuff together when they don't, because that doesn't help anybody, right? Reflections on that?
Yeah, I think like vulnerability is like, can become, it's the most dangerous place to be in some ways, right? Because that's, you're exposing yourself, you're taking your armor off, and you're saying, you can hurt me. But I think the power of vulnerability is while I'm taking my armor off, I know that you're going to stand in front of me and protect me. And so I think that vulnerability within community allows opportunity for empathy, and for people to be in it with you, and for people to stand beside you and in front of you in some ways. And so it's so important to be vulnerable and to be real, because I think healing can come from that, and deeper community comes from that.
Yeah, and hats off to, I see Tim's comment is great, and Amy agrees. And I just want to praise God for people like Tim and Amy and others at our planting community, kind of our recovery discipleship community, because you guys are really leading the way in terms of transparency, vulnerability. I mean, that's always been the case with Mending Nets of previous years. It helped our culture become more authentic because it was more vulnerable and yet more hopeful. And so you guys are at the forefront of that, and I'm grateful for that. Izzy, I'm grateful for you. I thank God for this journey, this really difficult journey that you've taken part of, that the Lord has led you on since the pandemic started with your mother. We just want to continue to pray for her full and complete recovery. I know you just told me today that maybe you got some plans to get out there to see her with all your family and have a pretty significant family reunion this time around, right?
Absolutely, we're gonna party.
Yeah, that's great. Well, hey, thank you so much for taking some of your time to give us, the update on Betty's condition, and even more the update on your faith condition as it relates to.
Thank you.
Friends, I hope you've taken something away from this conversation that is encouraging to you and is building faith in you. And I look forward to maybe connecting again Wednesday, Lord willing, for the next Viral Faith. I hope your Monday is off to a really good start, and I just bless you in it. And don't lose hope, don't lose faith. I'll see you guys again real soon next Wednesday. Thanks again, Pastor Izzy. We'll be talking to y'all